Disclaimer: this content is rated R18+. There may be cursing, blood, gore, and sexual content. This content is for entertainment purposes only. All rights of this product belong to the original owner of the work, Wyona A.M. Copyright: all work in this video from our audio written book belongs to the original writer, artist, Wyona A.M. This video is for entertainment purposes only. To contact the original artist for use of products shown or heard in this video, contact at YouTube channel Wham times 3 blog, Instagram Wham times 3, Twitter at mx3_WA, Facebook page Wham times 3. The program used to edit this video was Adobe Premiere Elements 2020. Hello everyone! It is time for chapter 2 of my Chronicles of the House of Nine series, Druid Born. Here we go on to chapter 2, the Bertagia Estate. Selman Clark, much like his son Leto, had red wavy hair, olive skin, and the Irish-Asian descent look. However, he had red-brown eyes. Leto and his triplet brother Ayato had inherited their mother's piercing green eyes, while the third triplet, Reggie, the youngest, had inherited their mother's dark features, but their father's eyes. Zelman walked through the familiar courtyard, followed by his secretary and 2 other men, quote-unquote bodyguards, which Zelman laughed at amusingly. When Zelman laid eyes on his 4th son, he stopped dead in his tracks. The concern and worry on Leto's face, which was normally filled with amusement and playfulness, was dark and clouded. Zelman scanned the room. Ayato laid it back on a white and oak love seat, one leg falling lazily off the side, as Reggie sat on the floor playing with his teddy bear. However, Zelman knew his sons, and saw the concern in their eyes as well. Ayato, it was concern for safety, while Reggie it was more could he play with this new danger like a cat with a mouse. Leto stood against the door frame of the sunroom, arms crossed as he looked out the window. "Is it that bad?" Zelman asked playfully, sitting down on the love seat's twin across from his 3rd son Ayato. "She's rare," said Ayato, not moving. "With Reaper and Dragon eyes," finished Leto, finally looking at his father. "Not only a rare breed, but rare powers," Zelman stated in amazement. "What's your plan?" "That's up to Leto," Ayato said, looking at his brother, who was back to looking out the window. Zelman looked at both his sons. Ayato and Leto had always been close, from the very start. They never let anyone in, not even their triplet brother Reggie. "Can I at least see her?" Leto sighed and left the room. Zelman followed his son out of the room. Leto led his bedroom, his room, where the girl slept in his bed. She looked natural there, her dark hair spread out over the dark green silk pillows. Zelman looked at her features. He recognized her instantly, but he wasn't going to tell Leto. They would need to remember each other on their own. Zelman looked at her necklace. He reached down but paused, feeling his son instantly get protective. "Easy, she's yours," Zelman assured, pulling the necklace out. He looked at the locket and the cross. "That cross is from St. Mary's in England. The design in movies told me demon hunter, but specifically made for such a sister, which your girl does not seem the type. And that locket is fey-made. Ancient, from a time long forgotten to many of us, passed down through the heirs of the bloodline. At least that's a lead on finding out whom or what she truly is," Ayato stated, appearing in the door, his brother only giving him a brief acknowledgement. "Or maybe her name is for her own protection," someone pointed out. "What name is she using?" "Kelly Faith. Fake, of course. But that's not the issue," Ayato continued. Being the head of security, he took his job rather seriously. "The issue is her family name." Zelman lifted his eyebrow at his son. "Enua and Badia, Galach, Linma, Les, and Dragon," Leto answered. Zelman's eyes widened, his jaw dropping slightly. The necklace was falling out of his grasp as his mind processed the thousands of languages and family trees of their people. "She's royalty!" Leto nodded. "From an older clan than ours," Leto nodded again. Now Zelman understood his son's concern. They just had a child of the moon appear on their doorstep asking for protection. Zelman's excitement and fear boiled to the surface as his mind processed again, trying to figure out the exact line she was from. Her name the biggest clue. Then there was the fact that he knew the girl. They all did. He began to fully understand the situation. He remembered the little girl, the priestess's daughter, but hadn't realized how ancient their heritage was. Now here she was fully grown in the bed of Leto where she truly belonged, and yet neither held any memories of that time or recognized each other. I plan on putting her under my protection, Leto said. Whether she wants it or not, finished Aito. Which is for the best, Zaman agreed, wrapping his fingers around his chin and thought, how'd she get here? Nicholas found her on the beach, Aito said against the doorframe impatiently. The wolfman appeared soon after, continued Leto, and so he sent her to you, concluded Zelman. Both nodded. I will call Issei. This is something the elders need to know. And say, he would know soon. He probably already has sensed her presence. Leto nodded. I've already increased security. I'm not taking chances, Ayato stated coldly. I would send some of my men over as well, Aito grumbled, but Leto sent him a warning look. Though Aito was the oldest, it was Leto who was the true heir of the clan. Kelly went in and out of consciousness, her dreams filled with nightmares, the haunting laughters of those creatures, those monsters, a blur of drinking that bitter pink liquid and chicken broth which Leto forced her to drink despite her efforts to try to fight him off. He would just chuckle at her in amusement. Kelly's body went from numb to raging flames that feared to engulf her. She couldn't remember if she had screamed or not, but there were times she was sure Leto held her down on the bed. Then her body went numb again, and she fell into empty darkness that haunting laughter surrounding her. By the third week, at least that's how long Kelly guessed she'd been out, she woke in a lazy way, going in and out of sleep to find Leto standing at the window dressed in black dress pants and shoes, a white dress shirt, and a black fedora with a red ribbon. A light gray light seeped in through the window. According to the clock above the fireplace, it was 9 o'clock, but morning or night she wasn't sure. It was too light to be night and too dark to be day. Thunder rumbled through the old building, and she heard voices mumbling, light footsteps like there were people wandering through the mansion. My lord, is there anything I could get you? Asked a young woman. Leto turned from the window and took the clipboard a woman in her early 30s handed him. She was dressed in a dark blue suit with a skirt that was cut just above the knees, paired with black heels, and her blonde hair set snug in a French twist. She could be considered a beautiful model type. Kelly pictured her on a beach in a bikini, sun bathing, not dressed in a suit, handing a pure-blooded vampire a clipboard. How many guests? Leto asked, looking over the papers on the clipboard. 5 wolves, 4 older and a teenager. I already informed the wolves in the courtyard to allow them to roam, and let the guest wolves know that they want to hunt where the woods are and to stay away from the city. There was also a vampire on the second floor. He had registration for the school. I assume he is a professor. The warlock Bane showed. I gave him his usual suite, and Nicholas was asking for you, sir. He sighed quietly, sounding irritably tired. As he pinched the brow of his nose, Kelly realized that he was wearing glasses. And the reservations for the bathhouse are quite large. Many spirits want to replenish as soon as possible. Many more have been upset that they will not get in until towards the end of the season. I tried to explain that many made reservations last year, and now they are threatened with curses. Of course they are, he muttered with another exhausted, irritable sigh. Tell Nicholas I will speak with him tonight, and have cook send up some bread and soup. I think she is ready for something more solid than broth. He gestured towards Kelly with a graceful arm. Tell the spirits we will have room when we have room, and we'll fit them in at the earliest we can. If they so wish, they can make reservations for next year so they can get in sooner. First come, first serve, I believe is the right term for this, he said, signing some papers before handing her back the clipboard. Yes, sir. The woman bowed and laughed as Leto approached the bed. Kelly shut her eyes tightly and froze, even holding her breath as his cold fingers touched her forehead, then her throat, checking her pulse. No, cold was not the right words. Legends did exaggerate quite often, and she'd come to learn. His hands were cool, but there was warmth there. A beating pulse, warm blood moving through a living, breathing creature. A light, gentle breath tickled her ear. Your fever is down. That is a good sign, he said, lifting the blankets and turning Kelly slowly onto her back. She crunched at the sudden sharp pain, whimpering slightly. She felt numb when she woke up. It wasn't explaining the sudden pain, from simply being moved. Leto unbound the light fabric that covered her body and checked the bandages before a maid knocked on the door. Come in and put it on the table, he said, not looking up from his work. A woman dressed in a maid's outfit quickly set the tray at the table before bowing and quickly leaving. He rebuttoned the fabric and set her up. Another sharp pain went through her body, starting at the cuts this time. She found herself clenching onto his shirt, finding comfort in the strength of the ancient predator before her. Leto adjusted the pillows to allow her to sit up. He laid her back against them, then stood. She watched him as he casually got the tray and set it on her lap. Eat, he said before locking the door and going into the bathroom, his fedora being tossed onto the bedpost thoughtlessly. The sound of running water soon followed. Kelly felt like she was in a strange, tired daze. She ate slowly, savoring the taste of the food. It was good, and she fought eating too fast. As she finished the last bites, she heard the water turn off and the movement in the adjoining room. Leto soon came out in a towel wrapped around his hips. She could see that he was well built, covered in muscles and scars, non-human made. He closed the curtains of the window, took the tray of empty dishes, and left it outside the door. He threw some wood on the fire before closing the thick, dark curtains on her side of the bed, doing the same thing to rest as he made his way around the whole bed before flopping down on the bed next to her. She looked at him in shock, the towel teasing his hips, and a glimpse of dark red curls that led from his belly button down under the belt line, getting thicker and darker as they went. He smelled clean and his hair was still damp. He stretched, rolling over to wrap his arms around her hips with a sigh. No, it was more a moan. She looked around, her thoughts racing. Did he want sex? Had he been sleeping naked beside her all this time? Wait, how long had she been out? And when did people start arriving? Who is that? That woman who was here when she woke up? Kelly started to panic. Her heart raced. Her breathing grew jagged as she looked around desperately for something, anything to tell her what was going on here. Leto opened one eye and looked up at her. Groaning with annoyance, he sat up. Grabbing her, he pulled her down and pinned her back onto the bed. Sharp pain flamed through her body, and she cried out. His body rested gently on top of hers in an intimate way. She froze. Now, don't be trying to run off on me already, little bitch, he chuckled, not bothering to hide his true nature from her. No, he had from the start. He embraced his inhumanity, his vampiric nature. He was a predator of the night, pure and simple. Kelly tried to struggle against his strength. He wasn't even using his full strength. That made her panic more. Then a sharp pain made her stop. She bit back the scream and froze again. Her heart racing just like her thoughts, she forced herself to look into those eyes, filled with amusement for distress. Green eyes, 3 different shades. The pupils were small slits. They reminded her of 2 green emeralds and just as entrancing. They caught the victim's eyes and held them in place, much like a wild predator. She couldn't help but fall under their spell. She opened her mouth to speak, only to have him press one of his long, feminine-like fingers against her lips. You're in my mansion, remember, little bitch. That girl was my father's secretary. Her name is Krista Evans, with a C. She's worked for my family for almost 5 years now, and no, I have not drunk her blood. That's actually why she's stayed around for so long. He mentioned it like it was a challenge. She nodded. I rent out my rooms and bathhouse to spirits of others who need to cleanse or a place to rest on their travels. It's technically one of the House of Nine. His voice was casual as he told her the information, but it was like listening to a little bell, drawing you in to listen to every word. You're in my room, on my bed, and have been out for 3 months now. 3 months? Did he just say 3 months? Your rooms are almost filled, and now you have some meat on your bones. You're welcome, by the way, little bitch. He chuckled. His laugh did not match his looks or voice. His voice was smooth in a sing-song way, but his laugh was like the cackling of a witch from those old movies. I have come to enjoy your presence. I think I would change our agreement and make you my play toy. Maybe even a pet. What do you say? His long fingers danced along her jawline, then moved to trace her lips, his eyes narrowing, a possessive look in them. Now that she had some meat on her bones, he discovered she had curves, and her breasts were quite firm and delicious, despite being small. Most of her scars were healed, but her most recent wounds were still plain as day, leaving white scars along her light golden skin. The liquid did sometimes heal old scars, too, when it came through the system. Deeper wounds, though, often never recovered from the scars. He stroked her hair as it fell into black waves around her face. A cute childlike face that made her seem younger than she actually was. What she was guessing was about 16, however, being a creature of ancient breed, she could be as old as him. She also had spunk going through her memories, and talking to Nicholas, he found she was a fighter, too. Scared? Yes, but she didn't give up without a fight. She did not have an easy life, but then again it made him like her even more. He also loved her smell. He buried his face in her throat and breathed deeply. He couldn't help it, a rich, earthy, feminizing smell with the gentle pulse of her heartbeat. He purred with pleasure and loved how she froze under him. He liked her pulse. Can I have a taste? It could be your way of thanking me." His 6 fangs extended, his lips and tongue danced along her pulse. Fear filled her as he bit deep into her flesh. She squeaked in response, but stayed still, not bothering to fight as his weight pressed her into the mattress gently, making the already intimate position more sexual. The sharp pain from where he bit numbed, and a suckling sound came as he gently pulled at the 4 punctures. She could feel them, 4 fangs on the top and 2 small on the bottom, drawing the vein closer to the 4 sharp and longer fangs. The suckling sent a tingling pleasure through her veins. He also smelled good, a musky male scent, gently teasing your senses. She recognized it, far back into her memories, the ones she couldn't reach, but they were the reason she was here. She was sure of it. It was like how she'd recognized him when he stood in the doorway. She reached for the memories as they teased, but they were just out of reach. Tears tugged at the corner of her eyes. Lyta released Kelly's throat. The memories faded again as his tongue gently circled the wounds, closing them before he stepped up, bracing against his forearms, keeping that intimate position. "Ah, your blood is so filling, little bitch," he said with pleasure, licking his lips and closing his eyes, purring happily. Yes, purring, an actual cat-like purr. "You're like a delicate dessert. You'll be my new toy for sure," he said, opening his eyes, a strange glow to them. She stiffened, not remembering agreeing to anything. Had she said something in her sleep or while he was drinking? She'd gotten so caught up in the almost glimpse of her missing memory, she'd almost forgotten she had a practically naked, pure-blood vampire on top of her drinking her blood, who just so happened to be extremely sexy on top of that. On a scale of 1 to 10, Leto Bertaglia was like a 25. What had Nicholas gotten her into? She wondered in fear as Leto buried his face into her breast and breathed deeply. It was strange. She wasn't bothered by him wanting her as a toy. Compared to what she had been through, wasn't being a toy to a pure-blood vampire better than dealing with what she had been hiding from? And no one would dare try to take her if she was his, right? She also liked his touch, his smell, and secret to herself, she enjoyed the feeding. The pleasure it sent through her body and the protection she felt in his presence. Somehow, she knew she was safe. "I will mark you over and over again, claiming you as mine, little bitch," he said into her breast as he made his way down her body, unbuttoning her blouse with skilled fingers as he went. Though he paused at her shorts, burying his nose into her crotch, breathing deeply before licking up her body, teasing the curves of her breast and her cheek. "Bitch doesn't seem to match you," he pouted. "You do taste wonderful," he mused, his green eyes capturing hers. "I could just take you now." She blushed. He chuckled at her reaction. "Oh, but unfortunately I am too tired," he pouted again before flopping down next to her, closing his eyes as his arms brought her close, locking her in place. Kelly looked around, amazed at the fact that the mansion and surrounding estate was larger than she thought. Sure, the front part just simply looked like a 3-story pre-Victorian, a smooth mix between a mansion and a castle. The front courtyard was decorated with a half-naked woman with a fishtail pouring a pitcher of water. The fountain was filled with lily pads and colorful fish. The back of the mansion stretched out into a large U-shape. One side was a large garden with pools and glass walls so guests could look out at the scenery. The sun room, it was called, a mixture of mythical creatures and human statues in Greek and Roman style, either naked or half-dressed, was scattered throughout the garden and courtyards. On the other side was guest rooms, mostly 2 and 3 bedroom suites, but some were single suites. The main part had several parlors, smoking areas, a large library, dining rooms, and ballroom, which turned into another dining room when all the rooms were full. Naito explained they did their collections by 3 guests to a bed, especially when it came to wolves and other pack animals. In a distance, a couple of miles from the mansion, she had bad at guessing distance, was a large lake that reflected the clouds. A Japanese-style bathhouse sat on the other side of the lake, steam bellowing out into the sky. A large metal and stone fence spread around the mansion and through a thick forest, always guarded by men with weapons of both ancient and modern. A large pack of wolves protected the inside of the estate. When they first approached, happily howling and barking for attention from Leto, Kelly turned uneasy with slight fear. The wolfman did look like these large wolves, but not quite the same. She considered instinctively moving behind Leto, who gladly leaned down and petted the wolves, who jumped, licked, and nipped happily, their whole bodies swinging side to side. They are a mix between Lobo wolves, which my family used to raise, My father bred them with gray wolves, and recently my triplet bred Ayato added wolf hybrids. They were huge. The alpha stood just below eye level with Ayato, who stood about 5'8". She was guessing, knowing she stood exactly at 5'2", and definitely wasn't eye level with Ayato. She was barely chest level. Lito grabbed at Kelly suddenly and pulled her towards the alpha male, letting him sniff her. The smell of Lito covered her, letting the alpha know she was his. The wolf sniffed it everywhere, memorizing her smell, the perfume she had come to like, and the herbal soap she used, all the way to the earthy smell that was only unique to her. The alpha licked her cheeks, and the others did the same before running back into the woods and disappearing. They like you, he said, pleased. Lito chuckled while she took the sleeves of her sweater, wiping at her face. Leto had brought her new clothes, sweaters, pants, flats, and even a pair of boots and a good winter jacket, since winter would be here within the month. The leaves were all slowly changing color, and a cold wind had started to roll in from the south. Their next stop was the two-story bathhouse. The first story was a kitchen and large room filled with bathtubs, which were filled by a hot spring just by the mountain through the woods. The bottom floor was set up with 3 dining rooms and a private rooms. The top floors were guest rooms and servant quarters, all this done in old Japanese style with the fabric walls decorated with demons, dragons, and geishas. Lito introduced her to everyone on the estate. After about a month, Lito started sending her to school. It was hard at first, but Kelly didn't mind the work, and when she would come back from school, she got to get a glimpse of the 3 girls who dressed up like geishas and sang the traditional music at the bathhouse. They even had a samurai and ninja story, which the samurai kept getting cheated by the ninja. After some time, she learned from a couple of the other girls that Lito had inherited the mansion from his mother, Claudia Butagi, who had a grave just past the bathhouse. Lito had grown up here with his 2 brothers, who Shirley had briefly met when they arrived a couple of weeks after she woke up. Lito was the middle of a set of triplets. Lito was the oldest. He, like his brother, had red hair and green eyes, except he kept his short and his eyes held fierceness almost like a snake's. He enjoyed sword fighting, and she would often find him practicing somewhere on the grounds, while Lito, on the other hand, enjoyed the piano. Reggie was the youngest of the triplets. He looked much like their mother with black hair, but with their father's brown eyes. He carried around a stuffed teddy bear and only talked with the teddy. He also had a strange madness in him, hidden behind a childlike innocence. Out of the 3, he scared her the most. Lito also had 3 other brothers and a sister, Angela, but she was gone now, and her daughter, Maya, was now the head of her mother's clan, a wolf pack who were the main guards of the Clark, Butagi, and Vladimir clans, 3 out of the 5 of royal clans of the vampires. Edgar was the oldest, a prince with blue eyes and blonde hair. He often was found lying around with his headphones in and would only get up when necessary. However, everyone seemed to respect him as the oldest and rightful heir to the throne of Clark and Vladimir. Luca was the second oldest, who had black hair and red eyes. He wore thin-rimmed glasses. He was into science and carried a lab around with him wherever he would go. She heard he had a whole floor dedicated to his lab for his experiments, and he often experimented on anyone. She had been warned never to accept anything he gave her. The youngest of the siblings was Kotaro. Much like the eldest, Edgar was blonde and blue-eyed, but Lito explained she'd most likely never meet the youngest. He never recovered from his mother's death. She would meet Edgar and Luca at the yearly family gatherings. He also had a cousin, Subaru, who was his uncle Richard's only son and had been out of wedlock. Their father was Zelman Clark. She had only seen a picture of him with the 3 wives, and on television he was apparently a senator. He had red hair trimmed a little shorter than Lito's, brown eyes, and pale skin. Edgar, Luca, and Kotaro were from Zelman's second wife, Eve Vladimir, who was blonde and blue-eyed, while Aito, Lito, and Reggie were from Zelman's first wife, Claudia Butagi, and Angela was from Zelman's third wife, Karen Merce, who had been a wolf and passed away before the girl had seen her 13th birthday. Something tugged at Kelly's memories as she took all of this in. When Zelman had married Karen, Claudia had become outraged, saying he was a disgrace when he was a strong believer in mixing the races and everyone was equal. Karen had been gentle and patient and a good fighter. Everyone suspected Claudia killed Karen out of jealousy since she was Zelman's favorite wife, but could never prove it. A flash of flames, dark waters clashing against a rocky cliffside, a river of blood. Kelly shook her head with a sigh and put the scrub brush into the soaped water, then went back to scrubbing the floor. All these things she had learned from listening to the mansion. People always thought it was strange how she just knew things, but it was because objects spoke to her, telling her their stories and secrets. There was one time she found out the truth about a murderer she'd been living next door to. The police found the body of his missing wife in the basement thanks to an anonymous tip. The mansion still spoke to her, but she tried to ignore its calling, only wanting to concentrate on her work. She needed a place to live. She was safe here. Often when it got too intense, she'd take a break and sit at the lake, the only place that seemed to not wish to speak. It held its secrets, but it didn't want to talk about them, too ashamed, it said. Kelly took a deep breath of night air, thinking about the secrets the rest of the mansion wished to speak, and why it seemed to talk so bad. There you are. She froze and looked over to see Ito walking over to her. It was almost sunrise, and normally he was in the mansion by this time. He was the first to go to sleep, and the last to wake up. Ito was always up before sunset. She'd see him in the window or hear him playing the piano. I wanted to find out why my brother is so obsessed with you. His voice was cold and impatient, unlike his brother, who seemed to be amused most of the time, especially when it came to other people's pain. Kelly quickly stood and stepped away nervously. Ito, you startled me, she tried, backing away, but he stepped forward, catching her arm easily. There was just something about Ito that scared her, not as badly as Reggie, though. Reggie seemed like a serial killer, where Ito was just a vampire. Do I have to remind you that it was my brother who saved your life, which means you're in debt to all of us? That it is my permission that allows you to work and live here? Ito was the oldest of the triplets, however, didn't seem to care about the mansion and customers. She knew he was the head of security, while Reggie didn't have any responsibilities at all, at least that she could figure out. Kelly tried to struggle, but Ito easily pinned her to the ground, his fangs biting harshly into her throat. She cried out at the sudden shock. He fed deeply before he rose. His eyes had a crazy look in them, like he was on a drug. A look she had seen before from those who lived on the streets, too addicted to their drugs, unable to care about anything but the drug, or drugs in some cases. Amazing! I see why Leto begged me to let you stay. He lifted her to a sitting position, so she was straddling his lap and bit into her chest 3 more times, leaving big red marks on her skin. Yes, it is, isn't it? Leto showed up. Reggie close to her side. Do share. After all, I found her first. Ayato growled, releasing Kelly, who scrambled up and raced through the trees to the employee quarters. Leto and Reggie went to follow, but Ayato stopped them. Ah, you always have been so possessive, said Leto, walking away. Just remember, I had her first. Kelly raced through the employees' living quarters, out the back door and into the woods. She finally stopped behind a tree and slid to the ground, breathing a sigh of relief. One of the guard wolves came up to her and laid down next to her. Kelly hoped no one would find her here as she closed her eyes and rested. She fell into a deep sleep, not realizing she'd been followed. Ah, little bitch, you would get sick out here. Leto took the girl into his arms. Of course, little bitch doesn't match you. Unlike all those other whores, you're a good little pet. Loyal, coming when called, obeying orders. Petron. Now that has a ring to it. Kelly awoke in a familiar surroundings. Her head was resting on Lito's chest as he breathed rhythmically in his sleep. She watched him sleep, fighting off nature's calling as long as possible. She was comfortable and warm in the bed. She listened to Lito's rhythmic heartbeat, steady, calming, relaxing. He seemed almost innocent. She always enjoyed watching him sleep and seeing the side of him, a side she felt all too familiar with. Something pulled at that darkness in her memories. Had she and Lito known each other before? Was it possible? Everything here felt so familiar, from the estate to the mansion, even the triplets themselves. She finally couldn't hold it any longer and got up, making her way to the large bathroom. She came out after relieving herself to find Lito awake, laying on his side and watching her. Morning, Petron, he sang, liking the natural way the nickname came off his lips. Good morning, Lord Lito, she bowed to him. Lito extended his arm out to her, and she took it, finding herself being swung onto the bed, Lito on top. I should punish you, Petron, for cheating on me yesterday, he said, flicking her forehead. Cheating, my lord? He chuckled. Why, yes, Petron. With my brother, of all people. She opened her mouth to say something, but his long, slender fingers pressed against her dark pink lips. However, I don't know what kind of punishment would be the most effective, he mused, his fingers tracing her lips. Maybe I should teach you something new, he chuckled, his fingers now resting on her jaw. Open your mouth and stick your tongue out. She blushed. What? You heard me, Petron. Come on now, be a good little pet, he chuckled, and was pleased when she did, as he asked, closing her eyes tightly. He sucked her tongue into his mouth, enjoying the gas he received in return. His tongue danced around hers for a moment, positioning it in place before one of his fangs pierced through the gentle muscle. She squeaked in surprise as the taste of her own blood entered her mouth. His fang left, and his tongue returned, circling her tongue as he gently suckled on her tongue. A strange sensation danced through her body as her mind became hazy. The sensation rumbled down her body, finishing at her core where a tight longing and throbbing began. Leito released her and looked down at his pet, who was panting, cheeks flushed, eyes glossy. I love that look, Pet-chan, he chuckled. Want to play some more? He asked, and she eagerly opened her mouth, allowing his tongue to dance with hers again. Her legs spread wider against her will as the heat pressed against Leito's manhood. She felt him smirk against her as he deepened the French kiss. He was losing himself in her taste and smell as much as she was in the game itself. A rapping at the door interrupted them. Leito groaned and started nipping at her neck, enjoying the smell of the girl's arousal. My lord, Nicholas echoed through the door. Ah, it's that time already, he sighed, kissing Callie one last time before getting up. I'll be there in a minute, Leito called through the door, glancing back at Callie, who was slowly standing up, obviously still feeling the aftershocks of the new sensation he'd introduced. She ended up lying back down in bed, much to his pleased amusement. The wolfmen are closing in. There were attacks growing by the day, Kane growled. Being the head of security for the Say had gone to his head. And then there's the matter of your new pet, he glared at Leito from across the room. I do not know of what you speak, Leito responded, but his predatory eyes were cold. He did not like his pet being talked about in this meeting. She was of his and his triplet brothers' concern, not theirs. Everyone else looked curiously at Leito as he glared at Kane. They never had liked each other, but they could tell that Kane's mention of Leito's new pet had struck a nerve. Bullshit! You Batagas always keep secrets from the other Quens. What did you say? Aito snapped, standing up and gazing up into the werewolf's face. Enough! Say's voice echoed through the room, which shook from the force. Leito grabbed his brother. Not worth it. Aito glared at his brother, but allowed him to pull him away. Leito sighed heavily as he walked back into his room. It had taken some time to cool off his brother, who was now happily playing video games and drinking. Leito hoped that Callie was still in his room and hadn't snuck off to the servants' quarters. He needed his little pet, tonight especially. Over the months, Leito had found himself seeking the warmth of that nearly dead teenager who had washed up on his shores. He'd wake in the middle of the day out of sheer need for her to be lying next to him. It scared and intrigued him. Never had he longed for someone like this before, except for her. The image of the young girl, that priestess daughter, playing in the courtyard with him and his brothers, flashing across his mind, and with it more pain. He tried to shove the memories back into their locked chest, deep in his mind, as he opened the door. Her scent was strong in his room, and he was thankful to find her still asleep in his bed. She looked so natural there, like she belonged. She did belong, in this bed with him. He could not explain it, but he really did care as he curled up next to her. Bring her to him. She moaned slowly, her brows creasing as he brought her warmth into his arms. She crawled into him, scooting closer as she sighed and fell back into sleep. He breathed her in as he watched her sleep before burying his face into her hair and going to sleep. And that was chapter 2 of my Chronicles of the House of 9 series, book 1, The Druid Born. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you next time. Bye!